Amidst the stately atmosphere of the grand hall, unease rippled through the assembly of counts as Duke Agnes unveiled his intention to venture alone into the foreboding depths of the Black Forest. The counts, with furrowed brows and exchanged glances, harbored concerns that such perilous encounters should be left to the valorous knights, sparing the esteemed Duke from unnecessary jeopardy. After all, Duke Agnes was soon to embark on a journey to Acadie, prompting a collective urging for him to safeguard his well-being. In the midst of their deliberations, Armstrong, with a solemn nod, echoed the sentiments of the counts. However, Duke Agnes, with a hint of defiance, dismissed their apprehensions with a casual remark, prompting a hushed silence to settle over the gathering. Undeterred, the Duke expressed his resolve to cleanse the sinister depths of the Black Forest before turning his attention to matters closer to home. With a determined tone, Duke Agnes revealed his plans to enroll Joshua, despite any reservations others might hold, into the prestigious Imperial Academy in the capital. Upholding the esteemed traditions of the Agnes lineage, the Duke pledged to afford Joshua every opportunity to flourish, recognizing the undeniable talent that lay within him. Yet, these words sparked frustration within Chiffon, for he knew that the Imperial Academy lay beyond his influence. Moreover, he feared the repercussions of Joshua's potential return, as it could plunge Earl Babel into the treacherous waters of succession warfare. Chiffon weighed his options carefully, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Should he concoct a convincing excuse to keep Joshua at a safe distance, or should he consider more drastic measures? The thought of eliminating Joshua crossed his mind, but he quickly dismissed it as a rash and irreversible action. Just as he was grappling with his thoughts, Joshua approached Duke with an unexpected request. Duke, intrigued, inquired about the nature of Joshua's plea. With a determined tone, Joshua expressed his desire to accompany his mother to the capital. Chiffon's interjection sliced through the air, his voice tinged with urgency. Joshua, you cannot proceed in that manner. If only Lady Lucia is dispatched to the capital, Lady Vanessa will assuredly not remain idle, he asserted, his words carrying a weight of certainty. Joshua's response was swift, his tone tinged with skepticism. And what if Lady Vanessa chooses not to intervene? He challenged. With a furrowed brow, Joshua continued, suggesting a deeper implication to Chiffon's words. Are you insinuating that the Duke requires permission for such a trivial matter? The room fell into a stunned silence as the implications of Joshua's words settled in. Chiffon's mind raced, weighing the potential consequences of his statement. If he vocalized such a notion, it could be interpreted as a call for Duke Agnes to be more considerate of the Duchess, risking the displeasure of the ancestral gods. And Chiffon sensed a game being played. Carefully, Chiffon framed his response, expressing concern over potential rumors of favoritism towards Lady Lucia. It was a subtle maneuver, possibly hinting that the Duke should pay closer attention to the Duchess and displease the will of the ancestral gods. But before the tension could escalate further, Duke made his decision. He granted Joshua's request, allowing Lady Lucia to accompany him to the capital. Gratitude flooded Joshua's expression as he thanked Duke for his generosity. Duke Agnes couldn't shake the feeling that Joshua was far from ordinary. It had been ages since he'd encountered such an enigmatic presence, and even Babel, with all his complexities, didn't quite compare. With a furrowed brow, Duke addressed the counts, seeking affirmation. One by one, they voiced their agreement, aligning with Duke Agnes's judgment, much to his relief. The decision was settled. Turning to Armstrong, Duke Agnes issued instructions, his voice firm. Once the Font family reports were organized, Armstrong was to rendezvous with him, bringing along the dispatched knight. Armstrong nodded in understanding, his resolve evident. As Duke Agnes prepared to depart, he called out to Joshua, summoning him to his office. Yet, just as the air seemed charged with anticipation, Babel entered the conference room, catching Chiffon off guard. Babel approached. As Babel stepped forward to greet the Duke, Duke Agnes remarked that he hadn't noticed Babel's presence earlier, implying that Babel seemed to have arrived late. Babel, wearing a serious expression, offered a sincere apology, explaining that he needed some time alone to gather his thoughts. Observing Babel's demeanor, Duke Agnes couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted within him as well. There was a noticeable change in the atmosphere surrounding Babel, though not necessarily in a negative way. Duke Agnes prompted Babel, suggesting that he must have a reason for seeking an audience with him. Curious, he asked Babel what was on his mind. Babel's gaze shifted towards Joshua, prompting an exchange between the two. Joshua, exuding confidence, queried if Babel had something to convey directly to him. Witnessing this exchange, Chiffon grew increasingly agitated, admonishing Joshua for his lack of decorum in a public setting. Reminding Joshua of Babel's elevated position, Chiffon emphasized the importance of propriety. Joshua's response cut through the tension. He identified Chiffon as Babel's spokesperson, highlighting Chiffon's unwavering loyalty to Babel and his status as a noble, bestowed upon him by Duke Agnes himself. Caught in the crossfire of hierarchy and allegiance, Chiffon grappled with the limits of his influence within the duchy. Attempting to clarify his intent, Chiffon insisted he was merely providing Joshua with insight into the intricacies of duchy etiquette. However, Joshua countered, asserting that merit and skill were the true arbiters of one's position within the Agnes duchy. If Chiffon sought to be heard, Joshua suggested he must first prove himself worthy, a principle deeply ingrained in the duchy's law. Left momentarily speechless by Joshua's confident rebuttal, Babel's response was unexpectedly gracious, assuring Chiffon that Joshua's assertions were not unfounded. Observing this interaction, Duke Agnes couldn't help but reflect on the transformation within Babel. Gone was the arrogance that once defined him. Instead, Duke noted a newfound humility, reminiscent of a true knight. Addressing Joshua directly, Babel acknowledged the necessity of proving oneself through merit and skill. With determination, Babel vowed to strengthen himself, refusing to remain stagnant while others ascended. His words carried a weight that resonated with Joshua, who recognized a profound shift in Babel's demeanor since their last encounter. Seizing the moment, Joshua voiced his agreement, acknowledging the evolution in Babel's perspective. Turning to Duke Agnes, Babel made a surprising announcement. He expressed his desire to relinquish his formal position within the Agnes hierarchy. The room fell into stunned silence at Babel's declaration, with even Chiffon and the counts taken aback by the decision. The Duke questioned Babel, suggesting that perhaps his confidence had wavered due to the arrival of a skilled competitor. Babel quickly dismissed the notion, affirming his unwavering self-assurance. He explained to the Duke that he simply wished to adhere to the principles of fair competition established by the Agnes house. Duke Agnes, considering the implications, assured Babel that his request would be duly considered. Gratefully, Babel expressed his appreciation to the Duke. As Duke Agnes concluded the meeting and departed, a subtle smile graced his lips. The shifting dynamics within the room didn't escape his notice. A sense of change lingered in the air. Though uncertain of what the future held for the duchy, Duke Agnes couldn't shake the feeling of optimism that washed over him. Meanwhile, in Duchess Vanessa's chambers, concern weighed heavily on her mind. Learning of Babel's decision to relinquish his position as heir and Joshua's departure for the capital with Lady Lucia only added to her worries. Chiffon confirmed the unsettling news, prompting frustration to bubble up within Duchess Vanessa. Expressing her frustration, Duchess Vanessa lamented the recent string of events, especially following the failure of the Centurions. Babel's significance to her was undeniable, and the thought of his voluntary withdrawal pained her deeply. Chiffon, sensing her distress, offered his apologies, acknowledging his own limitations in influencing Babel's decision. Duchess Vanessa, however, understood the stubbornness that ran in Babel's blood, likening it to that of his father. She reassured Chiffon that his efforts would likely have been in vain against such resilience. With resolve in her voice, Duchess Vanessa vowed that such a scenario would never repeat itself. However, if Joshua happens to attempt taking Babel's position, Lady Vanessa will inform the Duke about the circumstances involving Lady Vanessa and Chiffon. Chiffon reassured her, firmly stating that such a scenario would never come to pass. Duchess Vanessa, finding solace in Chiffon's words, agreed wholeheartedly. She then inquired about Joshua's upcoming plans. Chiffon informed her that Duke Agnes intended to accompany Joshua to the locked territory the following day. Upon hearing this, Duchess Vanessa expressed her apprehension about the remote and perilous nature of the locked territory, noting that the journey typically took 2 days. Chiffon elaborated, mentioning the resurgence of trouble in the Black Creature's forest and Duke Agnes's decision to address it personally. Lady Vanessa inquired of Chiffon whether, upon the Duke's return from locked territory, he would accompany Lucia to the capital. Chiffon confirmed this, acknowledging its accuracy. Subsequently, Lady Vanessa instructed Chiffon to convey a message to the Duke before his departure. She expressed her desire to dine with him, noting that it would mark their inaugural and concluding meeting. The next day, the courtyard bustled with activity as knights assembled and prepared for their journey to the locked territory. Workers hustled to gather horses and load the necessary supplies onto wagons bound for the northern reaches. Amidst the commotion, Joshua strolled among the preparations, a glint of excitement in his eyes as he admired the ring adorning his finger. The narrative pivots back to a few moments earlier, where the scene unfolds within the Duke's office. Duke Agnes briefed Joshua on their plans, informing him that once the disturbances in the Black Creature's forest subsided, they would set off for Acadie. Before that momentous journey, however, Duke had a special task for Joshua. Presenting Joshua with a gift, Duke Agnes recounted a time when he had aided the owner of the Magic Tower, receiving the Dawn Ring in return. Recognizing the significance of this artifact, Joshua realized that it was one of the legendary creations of the tower's enigmatic owner. Infused with mana, the ring could bestow its wearer with protective armor. Instructing Joshua on its use, Duke encouraged him to infuse mana into the ring, promising that he would soon master its capabilities. Joshua couldn't help but voice his surprise to Duke Agnes, questioning why the prestigious Dawn Ring was being bestowed upon him instead of the designated heir. Duke Agnes swiftly clarified, dismissing any misconceptions Joshua might have had. He explained that it would be a shame to let such a powerful artifact languish in storage, hence the decision to lend it to Joshua temporarily. But Duke Agnes had more to divulge. When Joshua pressed for further explanation, Duke Agnes revealed the additional benefit of the ring. When activated, it would conjure enchanted armor, each piece bearing the insignia of a different noble family. This, Duke explained, was to conceal Joshua's true identity from any prying eyes, safeguarding him against potential threats or opportunists seeking to exploit his connection to the Agnes lineage. In a candid moment, Duke Agnes disclosed Joshua's new fabricated identity, a Viscount's heir, nameless and anonymous. He urged Joshua to devise a suitable alias for himself, granting him the freedom to craft his own persona within the confines of their clandestine arrangement. As Joshua absorbed this information, a realization dawned upon him. The dual purpose behind concealing his identity and lending him the Dawn Ring became clear. It was a strategic move, designed to shield Duke Agnes's household from external scrutiny and potential threats, while simultaneously affording Joshua a valuable tool to navigate the intricate web of noble politics. With a newfound understanding, Joshua saw the advantages of his new role and the accompanying artifact. It would indeed prove advantageous in the face of encounters with powerful figures, ensuring his safety and preserving the integrity of Duke Agnes's house. Duke Agnes's question hung in the air, prompting Joshua to introspect. Did he harbor resentment towards the Duke? Upon hearing this, Joshua contemplates with a sense of uncertainty swirling within him. Even the esteemed Duke Agnes, a figure of great stature, had never envisioned his demise in such a futile manner amidst the impending war between empires, a conflict slated to unfold a decade hence. Perhaps it was the abandonment Joshua and his mother endured, left to fend for themselves, that ultimately led to his mother's demise. In his previous life, Joshua scarcely glimpsed the countenance of Duke Agnes, gradually allowing resentment to fade into the recesses of memory. With a wistful smile, Joshua contemplated the enigmatic bond between father and son, forged through the passage of time and the mending of old wounds. Indeed, as the adage went, time possessed a remarkable ability to heal. Returning to the present, Joshua found himself approached by Prince Caesar, noting the change in Joshua's demeanor. Caesar, sensing the shift, acknowledged Joshua's elevated spirits, playfully suggesting that he would need to address Joshua with the title of Sir henceforth. Curious, Joshua inquired about the reason behind Caesar's visit. With a casual air, Caesar relayed the rumor he had heard, that Joshua would depart for Acadie following the subjugation of the Black Creature's forest. As the prospect of Joshua's arrival in Acadie arose, Prince Caesar extended an invitation, suggesting that Joshua pay him a visit sometime. Caesar, confident it would be advantageous for Sir Joshua, hinted at the potential benefits awaiting him. Curious, Joshua questioned how such a visit could be helpful. Caesar explained his plan, detailing how recommending Joshua as a knight to the Order of the Imperial Knights would pave the way for a unique privilege. By securing this recommendation, Joshua could sidestep the annual Imperial Knights exam and skip the mandatory one-year service period upon passing. Essentially, Caesar proposed that Joshua could serve in the Imperial Knights at his leisure without the usual constraints. Caesar, grinning, emphasized that this offer allowed Joshua the freedom to depart whenever he pleased after utilizing the privileges of an Imperial Knight. He chuckled, candidly admitting his own greed in making such an enticing proposition. As Caesar laughed, Joshua couldn't help but find the mirth laced with pretense and hypocrisy repulsive. Despite the individuals behind Caesar, Joshua couldn't shake the urge to confront him then and there, spear in hand. However, he knew there were greater objectives at play, particularly his quest to obtain another cherished weapon from his past life, a weapon currently ensconced in the secretive confines of the Imperial Palace's warehouse, accessible only once a year. Joining the Imperial Knights and ascending to the rank of battalion commander seemed to be the key to unlocking this treasure. But for now, Joshua recognized the need to focus on immediate tasks at hand. Politely deferring Caesar's offer, Joshua excused himself, citing pressing matters demanding his attention. As he departed, Valmont offered a cryptic remark, hinting at the importance of humility in Joshua's journey. Caesar, dismissing Valmont's comment, urged their return, confident that Joshua would eventually acquiesce to his proposal. With their paths diverging, Joshua mulled over his resolve. This time around, he vowed not to be manipulated like a puppet. The tables would turn, and it would be Caesar who faced the consequences of his machinations. The departure of forces under Duke Agnes's command was swift, with the Duke at the forefront. The expedition to the Black Creature's forest was hastily assembled, notable for its relatively modest size considering the leadership of the country's Duke. Among the group were the Crimson Knights, led by Armand, the sole Class 4 wizard in the Agnes Duchy, along with Babel, Joshua, and a contingent of 100 others. Yet, amidst the journey, Joshua couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling of Babel's persistent gaze fixated on him. As the group reached the Locked Territory Castle, situated in proximity to the ominous Black Creature's forest, Duke Agnes was met by Robin, the former senior knight of the Clover Knights, who had pledged his loyalty to House Agnes for decades. Descending from his horse, Duke Agnes expressed his regret to Robin, acknowledging the hardships he endured in this desolate region even after his retirement. In response, Robin humbly declared it an honor to continue serving Duke Agnes, demonstrating unwavering loyalty and dedication to their cause. Robin expressed his desire to lead a life where he could be with his family, prompting a sympathetic response from Duke Agnes. However, as the Viscount of the Locked Territory, Vigo, and his daughter Anna arrived, Duke Agnes couldn't help but feel a sense of irritation. In his opinion, Vigo's presence was an unnecessary hindrance, diverting attention from their primary objective, the forest. Vigo, evidently displeased by Robin's oversight, chastised him for failing to inform him of Duke Agnes's impending visit. Robin, frustrated but respectful, offered his apologies to Vigo. Duke Agnes interjected, remarking on Vigo's apparent adjustment to life in the Locked Territory, albeit with a hint of sarcasm regarding Vigo's expanding waistline. Unfazed by the thinly veiled critique, Vigo graciously attributed his newfound prosperity to Duke Agnes's support. Joshua couldn't help but find Vigo's response either oblivious or audacious. As Vigo turned his attention to Babel, complimenting his appearance, Babel acknowledged him as uncle. Upon spotting Joshua, Viscount Vigo's curiosity was piqued, prompting him to inquire about the young noble's identity. Chiffon stepped forward, introducing Joshua as Earl Joshua, the second son of a lord. Vigo, taken aback, expressed his surprise at being unaware of such a significant development within his own family. He questioned when Duchess Vanessa acquired an earl of this stature, only to be corrected by Chiffon, who clarified that Joshua wasn't from Duchess Vanessa's lineage. Surprised by this revelation, Vigo sought to discern Joshua's origins, prompting Chiffon to disclose that Joshua hailed from a non-noble background. Viscount Vigo's demeanor turned serious as he approached Joshua, dismissing him as a lowlife. Duke Agnes, growing increasingly frustrated, intervened, urging Vigo to cease his derogatory remarks and attend to more pressing matters. Undeterred, Viscount Vigo extended an invitation for a meal, suggesting that Duke Agnes take a moment to rest. Duke Agnes, however, rebuffed the offer, asserting the resilience of his knights and emphasizing their readiness to continue the journey without further delay. Duke Agnes asked his knights, seeking any who might desire rest. In unison, they vehemently declined, their determination resolute. With a resounding chorus of refusal, they surged forward, prompting Duke Agnes to command his soldiers to press on. Viscount Vigo, despite acknowledging his limited resources, insisted on joining the expedition. As the lord of the land, he felt compelled to contribute, a sentiment echoed by his knights. Moved by Vigo's determination, the Knights of the Locked Territory pledged their support. Witnessing this display of unity, Duke Agnes turned to Vigo. Observing the situation, the Duke inquires of Viscount Vigo about Anna's intentions, wondering if she plans to remain in the vicinity. Vigo assured Duke Agnes that Anna would remain by their side, prepared to offer whatever assistance she could. Expressing concern for Anna's safety, Duke Agnes questioned the wisdom of bringing a child into such perilous territory. Undeterred, Anna voiced her desire to accompany them, demonstrating her magical prowess by enveloping herself in a protective blue aura and summoning a spirit, a feat that surprised even Armand, the seasoned wizard among them. Viscount Vigo revealed to Duke Agnes that Anna possessed the rare ability to wield spiritual arts, a form of magic exclusive to those born with innate talent. Sages, practitioners of spiritual arts, were even rarer than conventional magicians, with most kingdoms boasting fewer than 100 sages, even among the weakest. Joshua, surprised by this revelation, marveled at the rarity of encountering a sage. Observing Anna, he couldn't recall ever hearing of a sage named Anna, yet her presence seemed oddly familiar, sparking a sense of recognition within him. With Duke Agnes issuing the command to depart, the group organized themselves for the journey ahead. Agnes's knights took the lead, Locke's knights secured the rear, and the rest fell in between. As preparations were made, Duke Agnes couldn't help but entertain the thought of acquiring a sage to bolster their ranks. Meanwhile, Anna gravitated towards Babel, prompting Joshua to ponder the significance of her presence. Aware that they would be in each other's company for the foreseeable future, Joshua contemplated Anna's potential role in his plans, weighing the importance of her abilities against his own objectives. Viscount Vigo issued a warning to Joshua, indicating his intent to keep a close eye on him. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to the Grand Throne Room of the Avalon Empire, where news of Joshua's exploits reached the ears of Emperor Marcus. Intrigued by Joshua's prowess in thwarting Joker's attacks, even managing to counterattack despite Joker's status as a B-rank expert, Marcus found the development noteworthy. Addressing Evergrande, Marcus sought his perspective on Joshua's abilities. Evergrande, cautious in his assessment as a magician, noted the differences in mana utilization between knights and magicians. However, Marcus urged Evergrande to express his true feelings and speculate on Joshua's potential. Considering the question, Evergrande chose to frame his response in terms of the Imperial Knights. He acknowledged that he and Sir Valmont had yet to engage in combat, but he confidently asserted that in a one-on-one confrontation, he would emerge victorious over Valmont. Marcus acknowledged Valmont's exceptional accomplishments, noting his rise to battalion captain at a young age and his esteemed status within the Empire. However, he posited that Valmont would fall short in a match against Evergrande. Evergrande concurred, emphasizing the uniqueness of both Valmont and Joshua. Emperor Marcus, intrigued by Evergrande's assessment, probed further, questioning whether Evergrande believed he couldn't defeat Joshua. Evergrande clarified that while Joshua possessed potential, he wasn't currently a match for Evergrande. However, he speculated that Joshua might surpass him in skill within the next decade. Marcus, amused by the conversation, playfully suggested a hypothetical duel between himself and Evergrande. Evergrande hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Marcus, sensing Evergrande's discomfort, shifted the topic, expressing his fascination with Joshua and regretting not personally witnessing his abilities sooner. In a swift motion, Marcus signaled for a soldier named Jachin to emerge from the shadows. Emperor Marcus commanded Jachin to arrange for Joshua to remain at the palace for an extended period. Jachin relayed that the fourth prince, Caesar, had already initiated preparations for this purpose, which surprised the emperor. Jachin further informed Marcus that a recommendation letter from Caesar had been delivered to the Imperial Knights, specifically for Earl Joshua von Agnes. Marcus pondered this development, acknowledging that a recommendation letter was a viable option. While recognizing the purpose of the Imperial Knights, Marcus expressed disdain for the 11th and 12th battalions, viewing them as haphazardly assembled due to Imperial recommendations. He instructed Jachin to keep him informed of any developments regarding the recommendation. After Jachin departed, Marcus contemplated Joshua's potential talent and whether it made him suitable for a particular role designated as that. The scene then shifted to the creature's forest, where Joshua found himself surrounded by monsters, prompting him to grimly acknowledge his perilous situation.